So, hi, I'm Laura Dotero. I'm with the Council for the Advancement of Science Writing, CASW, with John Sutter.
Hey Laura, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for coming to talk about the Sharon Begley Award. You are our second winner of the prize, and we are excited to hear about how everything's been going. So, first, could you just tell us how you heard about our Begley Award and why you decided to apply?
Yeah, and I'll just say that I'm, so honored by this award, and it's been just incredibly helpful for me and put me in a network of people that has just been lovely and generous and kind and great. I heard about the award from the Knight Science Journalism program at MIT. I was a science journalism fellow, like project fellow with them a couple years ago, and I heard about it through that network. And I knew Sharon Begley's name and work. I didn't know her like personally. I have colleagues who did. But I think that her work represents just something really special in like kind of the history of science journalism and reporting. It's just so far ahead of everyone else in like a million ways. And so I was excited by the fact that it was, an award named for her and sort of in that spirit of like trying to think ahead a bit and trying to like find new and accessible ways to get into big global science topics that we all know are important.
Hmm. Yeah, and you were working on a project baseline that seemed to fit in with the spirit of some of the things that Sharon did. Is that correct?
Yeah, so Baseline is a documentary series. I'm working on the first installment now that follows three kids growing up on the front lines of the climate crisis. And the name is a reference to this idea of shifting baselines or shifting baseline syndrome, which was coined by this guy, Daniel Pauly, and basically refers to the fact that we're pretty like terrible as people at processing slow moving long-term change, at processing changes that happen on scales of generations and centuries rather than fitting tightly within the way that we normally tell stories. And so the premise of Baseline is following these three kids in a longitudinal way between now and the year 2050, which is when the world has promised to be carbon neutral. We're not exactly on that track, but it's trying to kind of like stretch our collective memory in a sense, or stretch like our storytelling, like the scope on which we're telling the story of the climate crisis, which maybe we know in our brains outlasts any of us, and carbon pollution stays around for 1,000 years. But it's hard to like even like kind of nod in that direction with our stories most of the time. And most of the work that I did, most of the other work that I've done on climate, for CNN, for example, was all very like point in time, this disaster, this moment. And so I'm trying to kind of like, yeah, take a little bit different approach with Baseline. And so, yeah, when I saw the award, I immediately thought of this project, and it is the kind of thing that like wouldn't be possible within the confines of like you know within a newsroom, like necessarily because of the long-term nature of it. It just sort of like requires a different approach. And so this award and some other philanthropic supporters are the only reason that like something like this can happen, or can exist. So I'm just again extremely grateful for that.
Man, even you saying that carbon lasts for 1,000 years, like made me take a deep breath. It just kind of hits you in a different way than, like you said, there was a big flood this year, or right now the temperatures are warmer than it should be in March.
Yeah, I mean, and when I accepted this award, actually, I read a couple lines from an article that Sharon Begley wrote in Newsweek, and I think like 1988, it was an extremely hot summer, and she wrote something about the idea that the weather reports had this like kind of I can't remember the exact phrasing, but like this like note of panic, I think is how she put it. That it was like a first reckoning with this idea that like our fingerprints are on the weather that we're observing. And so this extreme summer back in the 80s, wasn't like those that had come before it. And she was talking to farmers who were reacting to that, and other people too. And so I, I think it's easy to get caught up in, and it makes sense that we do. I do it too. In like whatever this moment, this season, this year is happening. But the truth is we've have been having those moments for a few decades now. And I think it's like an all hands on deck to telling the climate story. Honestly, the bunch of different approaches are needed. Mine that I feel like I can contribute is to, yeah, kind of try to stretch outside just this one moment and think about it in a much longer time horizon.
And how are you doing that with your reporting? Like, I imagine you have to use some kind of innovative techniques if you're going to tell such a different type of story.
Yeah, it's a documentary. So it's, like trying to embed in the world of these three kids. And they're in different places. One's in the Arctic, one's in Dominica in the Caribbean. One is in like rural Utah. It's a story about drought. So trying to live in their worlds very up close is one goal of the project. I've also worked with them to like varying degrees to like sort of help empower them to document some of their own stories and like to see what's going on in their communities like very literally through their eyes if they're holding the camera. So there are some um, moments in the rough cut of the film where we're seeing the world quite literally through their eyes, and others where they're narrating their own stories so that we can sort of get the insight of a young person growing up in this time, which I do think is super important, especially in that they live longer into the climate change future than than I will. And it's also something that's not seen terribly often in media about climate is like not outside of like the activist youth perspective, but like people who were just sort of growing up in this time and living through it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit about your timeline with the project and like where you were with it when you applied for the award, and then kind of how the award has helped you pursue it and where the project is now?
Yeah, I mean the timing of the award was really like huge for me because it was starting to feel like it was like a little bit of like an impasse in terms of like how are we like how are we gonna like have money to keep it going, and so this pushed us like further into the editing process, and we have a like a rough draft or rough cut of that first installment now that we're working on fine tuning. It helped me engage with some scientists and like science policy experts to review that draft and like sort of kick the tires on it and make sure that it's presented in a responsible way. So it really was honestly like transformative in terms of like getting this project into like a new place where it's getting closer to be something that we can feel ready to share with the world.
That's exciting. I'm excited to see it. And you're going to have multiple installments, right, moving into the future?
Yeah, the idea is to keep up with them between now and the year 2050. And I mean, my plan is to do three total installments. So one soon, one like at a midpoint, and then one in the year 2050. And there's kind of a I mean, there's like an accountability like angle to that in the sense that I do think we have to hold ourselves accountable for the promises that we like rightly have made to cut fossil fuel pollution and to be carbon neutral by that point. Um, there's also a way in which the project to me is like most about like a shift in thinking or a shift in perspective and trying to see the news of today, the weather of today, like the policy conversations of today in that wider time horizon. And so part of the goal for me is just to get people to think about that future in a different way and to realize that like 2050 is like nothing. It can sound kind of distant or like I've had people be like that sounds like science fiction, like that's never come, it's coming like soon, like in the way that like what we're doing right now very much is shaping whether those targets even become possible. So it's yeah, it's trying to engage with that future in a different way and get us to sort of feel in our guts the fact that that is a real future that we're all living into.
That makes sense. Yeah, I remember when 2024 didn't sound like a real year. So
True. Yeah, I do too.
it's very recent. Yeah. So how do you think, your story's really innovative and we're talking about, changing perspectives and everything. How do you think the Begley Award sort of does that within science journalism.
I mean, I think it gives a huge push towards new and innovative and like big approaches, right? Like having um an award with a cash prize that can help projects get off the ground or like reach some new level, it is really important. I mean, I think like I like I love journalism, I love storytelling and like all its forms. There are a bunch of newsrooms that are cutting back right now and that are, I would say in some cases, like less willing to take risks on new ways of doing things. And so this prize is to me like a force for encouraging storytellers to do what I think is actually needed, which is to like think bigger about things, think differently about things. We have to find ways to like shake up the conversation and make it feel fresh and new and engaging and give people a sense of like agency in the big topics of science. So it's partly about like explaining and connecting and understanding, and it's also about, yeah, helping people see the world in a way that they get that this moment really does matter, and we all do have a sense of agency and purpose and trying to help things be better.
Love that. Yeah, especially amid all these layoffs and everything, that sense of agency can really get lost, I think. So,
For sure, yeah.
and do you have any advice for people who might want to apply?
I don't know. I think like to seek out something big, to like sort of push yourself in new ways. I don't, also to be persistent. I applied twice for this award. I applied once and didn't get it and did the second time. So and to like talk with peers or mentors about your project and kind of like gut check it and think it through out loud before, putting it down on paper. I think for me, that's something that's really helpful.
I love that. And we're so glad you applied that second time. So
Me too.
yeah. Worked out.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being here to talk about this with us.
Yeah, thank you, Laura.
All right.